Paul Kingston himself at one of like the 24th of July or 4th of July parties that they had, he was like, the biggest miracle of the year is that David's still having kids while he's in prison. And everyone's like, ah, ha, ha, ha. But I remember being like, how is he having kids? Her eyes like widened and she was looking behind me like, and I was like, huh? And one of Paul's brothers from behind me starts fucking attacking me, trying to get the phone that had the pictures on it. And I was like, what the fuck? Phone flies out of my hand. He runs and grabs it and grabs me and starts pushing me with his hip out the door in front of people. There were witnesses, okay? I run across the street to my friend and I'm like, as I'm getting to him, he's like, starts crying. He's like, you're bleeding. And I'm like, what? And I touch my neck and I'm bleeding from the neck. This motherfucker clawed my neck.
Wow.
And I was bleeding but I didn't feel any pain because there's so much adrenaline. My friend was like, we have to call the police.
Are kings of incest. Like, that is why they have that last name.
Yeah.
They are incest.
Incest is bad. Well, I'm either going to leave physically or I'm going to leave this earth. One or the other. Oh, that's how that was really fucked up. What I came from was so fucked up that I would see his relationship with his daughter and be like, you guys are weirdos, because he loved her. And I didn't know what that looked like. And so a lot of my nights there were spent crying myself to sleep, realizing that what I thought was normal was actually fucked up. Yeah, I think, yeah. Will you pour me too?
Oh, yeah.
Did he actually drink the $800 bottle of wine, or was he saving it?
Yeah, I drank it with him.
How'd you feel about it? Was it worth $800 for you?
Well, at the time, I just don't think I had drinking enough wine to
really appreciate it. Yeah.
How much do you want?
I'll match you.
Okay. I'm probably gonna drink a whole bunch of wine there, cause
I love wine, so I'll probably just match whatever. Like, here's the thing. I'll go slow in the beginning. Yeah. And then by the end, I'm like sloshing them back. That's so funny. Yeah. Because you were saying, for the thumbnail, should I say, like, I got Amanda Ray to drink wine with me? I'm like, yeah, but you actually don't have to really try to convince me because I love wine.
All right. If it doesn't spill by the time we're done, then we did something wrong.
Is that the goal?
No.
If you're not throwing up, then did you really drink?
Yeah. Well, honestly, it takes not that much wine to get me, so.
How tipsy are you already?
Oh, I'm not tipsy.
Okay.
Not at all. All right, welcome everybody. This is the Jaden Jeffs podcast. We have Amanda Ray here with us, and we're here drinking wine. Nothing's off the table today since we're drinking wine, right?
You're here breaking order standards and it's against FLDS too, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely no alcohol in the FLDS. Yeah, we're doing things that our bishop and patriarch and 38 cousins probably wouldn't really like. So if my brothers are watching, they should send a letter to my dad reporting on me that I'm off recording podcasts with random girls, you know.
Oh, because this is also against your standards
too,
huh? Yeah, this would be considered BOSing, breaking order standards. And they called it pairing off. If a female and a male are off alone together, it's pairing off. And that's not good unless you're married.
Yeah. How strict are they with the female-male relation? Like, if you were in the order and you were doing something with your brother, is that fine? Working in the kitchen, how strict is it?
So, that's kind of this is a broad answer, I guess. So, they would say, don't be alone in bedrooms with your brothers. But then, my dad is married to his half-sister. His third wife is his half-sister. So my little brother was just telling me, because he had just recently left, and he said they had a meeting where he was saying basically you have to open yourself up to the Lord to be able to get direction for who you're supposed to marry, because that's how it works in the order. For viewers who don't know, direction for marriage is a big thing where either you get a dream or a premonition on who your number one choice in marriage is, and then you go tell the leader and blah blah blah. So my dad was in this meeting saying that he basically that he listened to the Lord so well that he married his half sister. And
That's crazy.
Yeah, he was telling my brother you need to be so basically open minded to God that you could even marry her, and points to his own half sister too. Which is weird though, because it's so you tell us not to pair off with our siblings, but then you tell us to be open to marrying our siblings.
That is crazy.
Hypocrisy.
I don't think in the FLDS anybody ever married their half sister. How common is it over there?
So I would say it's very common, because the leader is married to 3 of his half sisters and 2 of his nieces.
That is crazy.
All of his brothers also married half sisters.
The more I hear about the Kingston group and the leader and everything, I don't know. They're crazy.
They're wild.
Crazier than I think in some sense they're crazier than the FLDS.
It's crazy. This is what bonded me and Marianne when we first met. Marianne Barlow on Escaping Polygamy. If anyone watched, I love her. But we used to say about the FLDS when we was in the order, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm not in the FLDS, because then we don't have to wear those dresses. She's like, you know what we said about you guys? I was like, what? And she's like, we don't have to fuck our brothers. I was like, that's true. Okay, you guys win.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, for viewers that don't know, do you want to just kind of tell your background?
Yes.
When you left.
Okay, so not order background, but just my background.
Yeah, maybe the order a little, because
Okay,
right, kind of mixed, right?
I'll try to explain it in a way where, because you probably have a lot of outside viewers as well, and then I think mostly FLDS probably watch your channel.
Yeah, probably mostly FLDS.
Okay, so I was born and raised in the order. Hi, how are you? My dad has 3 wives. First wife is my mom's full sister, and the third wife is his own half sister. My mom had 10 kids, so I have 9 siblings from my mom, so 9 direct siblings. First wife had 15 kids, and the third wife had, I think, 8 plus now. So I grew up with a lot of siblings, which I'm sure you're familiar with too.
Yeah, but it's crazy how many every woman over there in the Kingston has. Because my mother, she has five children. My dad's first wife has, I think, 12.
And your dad's Warren?
Yeah.
Wow. I have so many questions, but maybe we'll save it for my interview with you.
Yeah. Just so everybody knows, we're doing an interview for my channel right now. Then we're going to hop over and do one for hers. Mm-hmm. But it's crazy to me how almost every wife has 9, 10, 15. That's crazy.
My mom had 10, and I remember thinking it was a modest size family. 10.
Uh-huh.
Because the record in the order is 20 kids.
Wow.
Yep. So the record for a while when I was there was 18, which was Paul's first wife, had 18 kids, and so everyone was praising her for it. So they're trying to beat it because it was like a championship almost.
Wow.
Can you imagine though? That means you're having a kid, more of your life is spent being pregnant.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah, if you have that many kids, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Who is your father? Is he Paul's brother or?
Yeah, so my dad is half siblings to Brother Paul. Yeah, Brother Paul is what they call him. Because I think you guys called him the Prophet Warren.
Yeah.
We just called him the Leader Paul.
I see.
Yeah, when we would do our testimony meetings, and we would say, and I believe that Brother Paul is the man on the watchtower. And this is the work of the Lord. So he was the man on the watchtower, whatever that means, guiding us to heaven. But so I grew up with all of these siblings, and then my dad, speaking of my dad, he was not on my birth certificate because we are the second wife's kids. So my last name, Grant, is a fake last name because I could not take his last name because the first wife. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you miss your testimony meetings ever?
So much. The only thing I miss is that I can't go up there now and be like, fuck you, Paul.
Yeah.
I wish I should have done it when I had the chance.
Do you have family meetings or just group meetings?
So we would do our church meetings every Sunday, right? And at the location Damon Palmer off of Redwood Road, and everyone would go there, and then our personal family would do once a month. I can't remember if it was the first Sunday of the month, but we would do once a month meetings with the 3 wives and kids. And my dad would, we'd sing the hymns, and then he would murmur.
Yeah, but it's just I'm trying to understand exactly how the Kingstons worked, because in the FLDS, a family was a family. You know, my dad had 80 wives, and if they were in one spot, y'all lived together.
All 80 wives?
If they were all in one place, yeah, if the house could accommodate it, then yeah, y'all lived together.
So you had 80 moms?
Yeah.
So you'd be like, Mom, not that mom, that mom. No, not that mom, that mom. No.
I never called any of them so we didn't say
Mother.
mom. Yeah, you don't say mom in the FLDS. But I never call any of them mother besides my own mother.
Oh,
right?
okay. Same. I actually didn't want to claim the other one because we had beef in our... This is what's weird. And maybe we'll talk about it on my channel too, because we'll get into more of your story. But every time I would talk to like Marianne and like members from the FLDS, it was like you guys had like a respect for the other mothers, and like the mothers really cared for you like you were their children.
Oh yeah.
And not us. It was like fights. Like they would. There was a wife that I did a interview with from the order, and she said that if one of the wives were mad at her, she would send her kids to go like punch her.
Wow.
Like there was so much. And I think it was your group was actually pretty good at unity and family, where our group was like they just cared about blending in. And so my mom had her house on this side of town. First wife had her house all the way over there. And then whenever my dad would go on like a trip with my mom, the other wife would be like jealous. And then they had to always be equal. So like he would spend one night over there, one night with my mom, and one night with his sister. Yeah,
it's weird because it's almost like a little bit closer to somebody just sort of going from house to house cheating kind of. Whereas in the FLDS, all the mothers are there. Everybody knows it, you know, kind of. But with the Kingston group, it's just so interesting how, you know, the women were totally separate.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard for me to wrap my mind around.
So was there not a lot of jealousy then in your families?
Oh, I'm sure there was, but they didn't act like it. They
would say they weren't jealous, and then they'd go tell their kid to punch them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they were very passive aggressive.
I feel like half of Dad's trainings are something about not being jealous towards your sister wives or something.
Yeah. So stupid. That's something I never understood about polygamy. It's like, okay, so we have to like save ourselves. They had this analogy where they're like, you have to make sure that your body, like you are like a present, and you want to give the best present to your husband on your wedding day. But every time you hold hands with a boy, kiss a boy, that's tearing that present. And then I was like, well, where's my present? What if I'm the fifth wife? There's no present for me. It's all been, you know, given away to all the other women.
Yeah.
So never understood that. And then the jealousy thing, and this is why Priscilla dropped me off here. If anyone knows me, I have a cousin, Priscilla, and she was talking about how she knew that she could never live it correctly because they said the only correct way to do it is you cannot have jealousy in your heart. And she knew that she would have jealousy in her heart. So she's like, might as well just leave the order then, because I wouldn't even be able to live polygamy in the way that the higher laws want it to be in the celestial kingdom.
So with your family, your mother was the second wife. You knew who your father was and everything, right?
No.
That is so crazy.
Yeah. They just, and here's the thing. They didn't just not tell me. They flat out lied to me. Like I asked, because I was like, suspicion, this guy coming over to my house every other day, is he my father? And I flat out asked him, and he was like, no, I'm not your dad. So I grew up watching the first wife's kids get to call my dad their dad. And then whenever I called him dad, like, because I would see them call him that, and I'd be like, oh, dad? And they'd be like, no. They'd correct me and say, that is not your dad. And I remember being like, well, then who the fuck is my dad? And I remember this specifically. I was like, then who was my dad? And my half-brother pointed to my mom's dad, my grandpa, and he's like, that's your dad. And I didn't care.
And it wasn't.
It wasn't. But I was like, Dad. I just wanted a dad so bad because I saw them get to have that relationship with my dad. And then coming to find out, I think the moment I realized was when we did baptisms, they would do these like ceremonies every, I don't know how often they did it, but it was to baptize all the 8-year-olds, right? The 8-year-olds that year would all get baptized in this pool in Bountiful. It was like this, the holy spot where when we would pray, we would all face north because it was to Bountiful, to the holy spot. Oh, really? Yeah. That was, so in church, when they say, okay, we're going to close for prayer, they'd call on a numbered man to close for prayer. and then everyone would stand up in unison and turn north.
Really?
Yeah. So the north was the holy spot where we all got baptized. And that's when I realized he was my dad, because I noticed that every one of my friends who was getting baptized got baptized by their dads.
Oh.
So I was like, okay, whoever baptized me is my father.
That's crazy.
It was my dad, and I was like, you fucking liar.
There is no such, that is just, it always blows my mind when I hear about the Kingstons not knowing about their father, because if you're in the FLDS, so many of your teachings and everything are about, obeying your father and doing what your father wants and whatnot. So
yeah, there's like pride to that over there.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of pride I've learned from my friends too, that say that it's weird that we were so secretive, and they said that they actually were like, it was a proud thing to be wearing their dresses in public. It was a proud thing to be like kind of like wearing their religion on their shoulder.
Oh yeah.
But with us, it was like, don't tell anybody.
I'm gonna turn that mic.
Sorry, is it too loud?
No, I just didn't realize that the front wasn't facing you.
I was gonna say, I didn't realize you were gonna be so fucking loud. I do when I drink too. I'm like da 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 da.
Oh, you're good. Is that good?
I think it's good. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. But I thought I was going somewhere with this whole dad thing.
Well, it's just crazy to me that you don't know who your father is. What age did you find out?
That was 8.
8 years old.
From my memory, that's where I knew for sure. I had like really big suspicions, but the confirmation was when he baptized me. He's like, I baptize you in the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. And he said my full name, Amanda Ray Grant Johnson Kingston. I was like,
whoa.
Johnson Kingston?
Amanda Ray Grant Johnson Kingston.
So if there was no fake names and there was no like not taking the man's last name, I would be Amanda Kingston from Ortel Kingston, who was the leader before Paul. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Okay.
I'm Amanda Ray Grant Johnson Kingston. Should I change my Instagram name to that? To be here?
No, I don't think Kingston is.
I know that name is not very famous. Do you get that with Jeffs?
You mean people asking about? Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I have a lot of people, especially here in Utah.
Oh yes.
Any relation to Warren Jeffs?
Like, what do you say? What's your usual answer?
It's like yeah, there is.
Yeah. So here's what I do whenever anyone's like, "You're from Utah? Were you Mormon?" I'm like, I don't want to lie, but I don't want to tell the truth. Like it's like you kind of gauge the situation to decide like how much do I really want to tell them. Mm-hmm. Do I want to blow the socks off this person right now? Yeah. There's been a lot of times where like I'll just tell a bartender all of my lore and then leave.
Yeah. Before I had left the FLDS, but when I was still doubting it and everything, then I would open up to a lot more people just because I wanted to get it off my mind somehow.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, I was like that for a while where I didn't know how to process it correctly. So any opportunity, like if someone would be like, how many siblings do you have? I'll be like, my dad has 3 wives. Because I'm like, I don't even know how to process this. So I'm just going to tell you, you're going to think I'm weird, but at least I can like own it and understand it better, you know?
Yeah.
Especially when you don't understand like therapy. Did you go to therapy?
No. Oh, I mean, I've been to therapy a few times, but like, I just doesn't, I always feel like, you're good. I always feel like I'm trying to help the therapist help me. I think they just don't understand, you know?
What therapist do you go to?
I've just tried random ones.
You don't go to Holding Out Help?
No.
You should. It's free therapy. And she's, here's the things that I've learned, and this actually came from them telling me. Talk therapy doesn't work they don't have as high of a success rate with men, especially from FLDS. Did you know this? They don't have a very high success rate with men because it's harder for the men to talk about it. Like that one is harder, but they have other forms of therapy that are easier for men. Like
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like if you're from the FLDS, then therapy's for women.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of, because I was trying to get down to the bottom. I was like, why are women so much more willing than men? And I honestly believe that men are pressured way more in FLDS and the order to repress that, be a man, don't cry. And so you've repressed so much of like natural emotions and feelings. So every time you're sitting in a therapist chair, you're just like, this is for wussies, because you've been taught that your whole life, that a normal emotion that you felt from a very young age was unmanly.
Right, and it feels like, I mean, you literally feel like you're blushing or something right there in the chair, and it's like, get me out of here.
Which is funny, because like I felt that too a little bit, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. But it's like, this is the place to be free and be embarrassed, because she can't tell anyone, right? Yeah. Well, my therapist is the girl, but if you have a male therapist. But I really liked my therapist with holding out help as one of my first therapists, because she already knew. I didn't have to explain what polygamy was. I didn't have to explain who Warren or Paul or any of the lore, right? She's like, yep, I get it. So you can go straight into all of your issues, and she'll be like, oh, okay, you know. But it's really just for you, you know.
Yeah, I've never talked to the people over there. You know, I just.
Maybe you should. I mean, if you feel like you need it.
I feel like some of my sisters need it.
Yeah.
Like.
You don't think you need it? I think you do. I think anyone who's Warren's kid needs some therapy. Well, honestly, any human being would benefit from being able to process their childhood in a healthy way. And the fact that you were in the situation you were in means that they didn't allow you to process it. Like, I can already assume that they didn't allow you to be a free child, right?
Yeah, that's true. So you're going to public school, right?
Yes.
What's public school like?
So I went to order school, and then I only went to public school for 2 years.
Oh, really? So the order does have a school?
So the order has a private school called Ensign Learning Center. So that one is preschool to 6th grade. And then while I was going there, they did not have their public school. They have a public school, but it's just all order members. They did not have, it's called Vanguard. They did not have that school until later. So I got to go to public school for 2 years. And that's when I realized how like sheltered I really was. You never got to go to public school?
Oh, no. I mean, as my dad's kid, I never really even got to go to, and I mean, we went to the school down there in Texas, right?
Okay.
And I guess as a community, you could kind of consider it a public school, like all the other kids on the land were there.
Yeah.
But Dad was so careful with his kids. Like,
what does that mean?
I mean, like later years, he didn't want us going to that school. He wanted us at home, doing school at home, right?
But that school was still just members.
Yeah.
What? So yeah, he was like a cult within a cult.
Yeah, he was like super sheltering of his children. All of them, really. But so you go to a member school, and then you go to public school for 2 years.
I was only allowed 2 years because, well, 2, almost 3, because I got caught going on dates with boys.
Oh, did you? Like at what age?
14? I think I was 14. And my dad, he found out. I went to the movies with the Mormon boy. It was so innocent. And he, I remember, oh my God, I haven't thought about this in a long time. You're bringing up memories. He grabbed my face in his hand, and he's like, "You will never see that boy again." And I was like, bet.
Yeah.
But so because I went to the private school for a long time, which they say the N-word. I'm sure they say the N-word in FLES too. Actually, I know they do because I heard some of them.
Yeah.
So they're very like racist. Racism is very rampant in there. They don't even call them. They don't think they're racist, but they are. And so when I went to public school, one of my first friends was a black girl, and I was. She was so nice to me, and so I kind of just like naively was like, "You should come to my house," and I brought her home.
Oh, really?
And my dad was like, he was super nice to her. Like the Kingstons are really good at like being perceived as like, oh, we're just functioning humans in society. She goes home and he goes, "I cannot believe you brought not only an outsider but a black outsider." I was like, what did I do wrong? But it made me so sad. I remember crying over it because I was like, she can't go to heaven? Because did you guys believe in the war in heaven, the great war in heaven?
Yeah.
Okay, so For viewers who don't know, I guess this was the core belief for both of us that we grew up in. There was a great war in heaven before we were born, and it was Jesus saying, we should give the people free agency. And Satan was like, no, we should force them to do the right thing so they all go to heaven. And so the people who chose Jesus' side became the white people on earth.
Yeah.
The people who chose Satan's side were the demons of hell. And then there was the fence sitters who were not white. So they would say black people, but they call Mexican black. They call anything that's like close to, that's just not pure white. I don't know if the Asians would be in that category, but
They are. So one of the things my dad said before I had left is, you know when the Noah's flood happened? And
yes, I was there.
There was like Melchizedek. Okay, us white guys were from Melchizedek.
Oh.
Those Asians, they're like from like there was 8 people on the ark, and one of them was black.
Right, it was Shem's wife. I remember they told us that. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Because I asked my dad, I was like, if black people are so bad, why did Noah let them on the ark? And he was like, because, tell me if this is you at the time. Because the Lord said when he cursed Cain with blackness, because Cain killed Abel, and then God came down and cursed Cain with blackness, and he said, you and your posterity will be cursed for generations. And so my dad was saying basically that curse had to be fulfilled. So Noah had to bring Shem's wife, who was black. Which I'm like, how do you guys know that Shem's wife was black? Like what the hell? So who was Asian on that Noah ark?
I think Jethro was. Oh no, maybe I have it mixed up. Who else was on the ark? Melchizedek.
I don't know
Shem,
any of these names. All I know is Shem and his wife.
Well, it was Noah and his 4 sons, I think.
Okay, and then whoever was married brought their wives.
Yeah, but one of them, according to my dad, was not as good as Melchizedek, and that's what the Asians are, according to my dad.
So he was like, that's so interesting.
But definitely, there's a aspect of. That's one of the things that's difficult about Mormonism, I guess, is they kind of just like, nah, they kind of just will sweep that all under the rug, right?
Right. What do you mean, like, because they believed in they were racist?
Yeah, they were. Like, blacks couldn't receive the priesthood.
Right.
Right.
But they just pretend that never happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, Brigham Young was like the biggest racist ever.
Yeah.
People claim that Joseph wasn't as much. He didn't really care, but Brigham was like, no, we cannot have this.
Yeah, Brigham Young was a crazy dude, honestly.
Yeah, wild. I had a question for you. What was it? Oh. Did you guys believe? So there was Noah's Ark. There was the. Damn it! I just forgot it. Wine makes me a little bit like I go over here and then I go over there and then I go over here. So sorry in advance, you guys.
Yeah, that's what's good about wine, honestly.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna stop.
Yeah, we're going to the end. I hope by the time your podcast comes around, I'm not too out of my mind. I'm gonna say some things I wish I hadn't.
That's the best part.
Yeah.
Secrets. So with the like racism and stuff that they had over there, was it, because in our group it was like marrying someone who is black is like one of the worst things. Yep.
Oh, absolutely. So
but they said black as in like black, Hispanic, like anyone with just like darker skin.
Yeah, if you have a trace of black blood in you, a trace. That's one of the reasons why medically we were against like blood transfers for the most part. Because you don't want to go to the hospital and be getting transferred in like some
black blood.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You know what I heard? Sorry, we'll get back to my stuff, but I'm like, I need to save this for my episode. But I heard that when an FLDS person leaves, then they have black blood. Their DNA changes.
One of the things is if you ever have sex with a black person at all, ever, then you are considered having the black taint. Right.
Wow.
And you're basically have the same curse as they do, is what my dad would say.
What if you don't have sex with them, but what if you just like look at them? Then what? What if you like kiss one?
Maybe you could be forgiven. I mean,
that's funny. Well, it's not. It's funny, but it's like it's also like it's so the order, and I think the FLDS. It was like, no pun intended, black and white thinking. Like it's either this way or you are wrong, good or bad. There's no in between.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Yeah, it's either black or white.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so the Mexicans are considered like having some degree of taint in their blood, at least. But the Indians are considered somehow better. You know, we can have Indian blood in us.
Us too.
Yeah.
I'm Native American. Oh, I was told through the Johnson line because my grandma Isabel, her dad is Price Johnson, who was from FLDS, and supposedly he married a like 100% Native American. But what they told us is that the Native Americans are of the 12 tribes of Israel, so they're safe.
Yeah, they just got they just got this curse put on them, and their skin went darker. Which is, I don't know if they just spent too much time in the sun.
Yeah. So sorry, I feel like I'm getting into too much lore with you where we understand, but you guys may not know. The 12 tribes of Israel, so this is a whole thing where they believe that as long as you're in the 12 tribes of Israel, they're safe to like procreate with, but anyone out of the 12 tribes of Israel is not pure enough. So we believed that we were direct descendants of Christ.
Yes.
How could you guys be if we were?
I mean, we did kind of all come from the LDS. So.
True. So did you guys believe that Jesus had 3 or multiple wives?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Did they say how many?
No, I thought they said something like it was supposed that he had upwards of 30 wives.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought it was 3.
You know, Dad, like we didn't profess to like know exactly, but one of the things Dad would teach is, you know, in the Bible where it says many women followed after him or something like that. Yeah, that was all his wives, pretty much. Yeah.
Women flocked.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did they say Mary Magdalene?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so ours was that everyone said that she was, because it was like prostitute or something. Everyone said she was a prostitute because she was like getting pregnant and not married, but it was because, and the reason why Jesus saved her from getting stoned was because it was actually his wife. So didn't tell you that?
I didn't hear that, but
well, now you know.
Yeah, but that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that question comes up a lot because in order to get into the celestial kingdom, you have to live polygamy. So then everyone's like, Jesus wasn't married? And they're like, but yes, he was. So I guess you guys had 33 because that makes sense because Warren had what? How many wives?
79, 80.
79. Damn. And then Paul had 27.
How many kids did your dad have?
I can't tell you exactly because I'm cut off from the family. But the rumor has it that I have 32 siblings. How many do you have?
54.
What? With all those wives, you only have 54?
Yes.
You guys got to get on it.
That is one thing a lot of people don't know about my dad is he didn't, I think 19 wives have kids, and some of them only have one kid. They would have had more if he wasn't in prison, obviously, but.
That's actually, did anyone ever tell you, because you've interviewed my cousin Kent, you've interviewed John Tucker, who was on my channel too.
Yeah.
So you've interviewed quite a few from the order. Has anyone told you about the story of David O. Kingston going to prison?
No.
Okay, let's drop the lore. David O. Kingston is Brother Paul's brother.
Okay.
His number is number 33. I'll put a pin on the number thing. We need to get into the numbering system in a second. But David O. Kingston is Paul's brother, like one of his right-hand men, right? And he has multiple wives. Some of them are his sisters. But he went to prison. This was a big thing back in the day when I was super young. He went to prison. They never told us what he went to prison for. We do this thing in the order called meditation every day. Where,
really?
Yeah, we would have to bow our head and meditate for 5 minutes. And they would tell us what to meditate about. And so in school, in Enzyme Learning Center, the private school, the bell would ring at 12 o'clock. And then there would be someone watching to make sure that you were bowing your head and closing your eyes. You could get your card pulled. It was like a type of penalty where they'd pull your card and you'd get reported if you were opening your eyes during meditation.
Wow.
So in meditation, they would say, here's some ideas for like what you should meditate for. Meditate so that David Kingston, make sure that David gets out of prison. We didn't know why he was there. We thought that a lot of the people said that, well, if we were just good members, he wouldn't be there. We need to be more loyal. I think they do that with Warren too.
Oh yeah, 100%.
They put it on you guys that he,
100%.
Yeah, so stupid. So I'm like a little kid, like, please help Brother David get out of jail. Come to find out, he went to prison for raping his underage niece that was supposed to be his bride. So his brother's daughter, 15-year-old daughter, it was just like she didn't want to marry him and he was forcing himself on her. It was like a whole thing and it became in the news. And so the big thing, sorry, to get to this, you're like, how are we getting here? Having kids while in prison. His wives were still getting pregnant.
Really?
While he was in prison.
Wow.
So that was such a big conspiracy. Like there was a joke of a turkey baster because Paul was one of the attorneys for David, and so there was this joke that there was a van with a bunch of the wives with a turkey baster, and Paul would go in, get the stuff, and then turkey baste. But yeah, all of his wives were still getting pregnant, and to this day, if anybody knows anything and is watching this, please tell me, because there's also a theory that it was the brothers getting them pregnant. But some of the kids born that year have deformities, like issues.
Oh.
So that's why I lean more towards the turkey baster thing, or however they were transporting the stuff was not medically, safe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yep.
They should get a DNA test and see if they're actually his kids.
I know.
Why didn't Dad ever do that?
I know, but like it's so weird that nobody knows. But like Paul Kingston himself at one of like the 24th of July or 4th of July parties that they had, he was like, the biggest miracle of the year is that David's still having kids while he's in prison, and everyone's like, ah, ha, ha, ha. But I remember being like, how is he having kids? They just never said it.
Did you understand sexual stuff?
What sex was?
Yeah, I mean, did you understand somebody needed to have sex to have kids? Because like when my dad went to prison, I was like, why aren't any of the mothers having kids? I had no clue.
Why did it stop all of a sudden?
And the mothers would say, oh, well, father's in prison. I was like, so? Like,
who
cares? Yeah.
So did you think it was just like, if you're married, then all of a sudden the women are just having kids?
Yeah. Yeah, get married and...
Really? Some members in our group thought that holding hands all night was how you get pregnant. And I remember hearing
you should
this.
Try that.
Yeah, try it and see if you get pregnant. So this one kid told me, he was like, for the longest time, I thought that holding hands was how you get pregnant. And every time people were having complications, I thought it was because they couldn't keep their hands held the whole night because they kept moving. So I was like, maybe you should use some tape on your hands. But isn't that wild, though, that for our group, it is all about procreating. Because they're like, their belief is replenish the earth. That they believed that the order was going to cover the entire earth one day. And they would be like, faith is like a mustard seed. The order started as a mustard seed and it's growing. So that's why you see women with 20 kids, 18 kids. My mom had 10 kids. First one had 15 kids. Because they're going to replenish the earth. So a group that is so obsessed with having kids doesn't even tell us how they're made.
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't you want to educate us a little bit?
They don't tell you anything either. Like,
yeah.
They also tell you, at least for me, like one of the big things was Dad, he would tell the mothers, one of the first things they teach you is never touch yourself, right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like do not touch yourself. Ever.
Did you actually listen? Were you just like...
Oh, yeah.
So then you just... Sorry
I took
if
that
this is
so
TMI.
dang serious.
But, so then you're going to have wet dreams, right?
Oh, no.
You didn't ever? I thought that's how men's bodies work. I'm not a man, so I wouldn't know.
I think some of my brothers were a little bit more, unfaithful than me, but...
You were like, nope.
By the time I was that old, we were getting insane messages to
leave?
No, just... no, Dad called it self-enlivening.
Oh, no, you're saying messages from prison.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying people were messaging you telling you to leave.
No.
I'm hearing something else. Okay, so he from prison was saying, don't you dare touch yourself.
Yeah, like when I turned 13, I was living in the house with my family, And Dad said, hey, you're being immoral. You have to move in with your brother in a house, just with your brother, until you do better, right? And so, like, you're having some sort of impure thoughts here. As soon as you repent, you can move back with the family.
Did you feel like guilty?
Oh yeah, I felt horribly guilty. So, and I didn't feel like I'd really done anything wrong. So, I got a boner and things, but that's just like natural.
When you would have that happen, where you're like, oh no!
Oh yeah, I was like, what the hell is going on
I
here?
gotta go repent for this. I hate that because it's like, it's such a natural. So Shalise from Cults to Consciousness, she actually told me this. She said that masturbation is such a natural thing that scientists have seen that a child in the womb does it.
Really?
But like, we are taught in our cults that it is unnatural. Isn't that it? But what I believe is they want to have control over those urges because they want to control who you marry, because they want it to be, well, especially for us, they had predetermined it was like trafficking. Like, they're already deciding which kids are going where. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess yours was a little different because when Warren went to jail, he was like done with marriages or something, right?
Yeah, well, like when I was 5, 6, 7, if one of the mothers saw you with your hands in your pocket, they would say, pull your hands out of your pocket.
Which is crazy because did you ever read Rachel Jeffs' book?
Yeah.
Did you read where he would have her put her hand in his pocket?
Yeah.
I love that she wrote a book. She was on Escaping Polygamy. That's how I met her. But I could not read the whole thing because I was so disgusted by your dad. Sorry, not to lump you in with him.
Yeah, no, I get it. Like, it's weird that he did that, but like he specifically trained the mothers over the boys, like definitely to
shame you.
I don't know what it was. Just like he did not want us doing anything. So they would come in the middle of the night and want our arms to be on top of the blanket, right? Don't have your arms below the blanket. Like, we were watched always.
She's like, I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything.
And I didn't, when I was younger, I didn't realize why. But if you like were ever maybe scratching barely with your hand in your pocket, that was a major red flag.
Wow.
Major red flag.
Isn't it weird though that Warren's in prison and he's like, Mom, talking to God. God says, you guys need to not touch it. Like, is there anything else? Like, is that really the most important thing he's telling you? But did you ever feel this feeling of, I remember when I would shower, I wouldn't even look at myself. I was like, I can't look at my own body, because that's how they made me feel. Like, my own anatomy, or anatomy, whatever the word is. Felt guilt.
That's interesting. I wondered how it was for you guys, because, in my mind, like, you are not wearing the prairie dresses or anything, but you're still required to
be modest.
Be modest, and it's like it's a mental weird thing where when I was leaving the FLDS, I felt like if someone was wearing jeans and they just thought totally different, kind of a thing. Like they were just naturally.
They were a slut.
Yeah, something like that. It didn't matter, because now I understand that you can be wearing a pair of jeans and be considered totally modest, but back
not
then,
in FLDS terms.
Oh, no. I could not even imagine that. I viewed a pair of, tight jeans the very same as I did, like, a pair of shorts or something. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah. Isn't it interesting, though, that the more they made you, like, not touch yourself, make the girls wear dresses, it just made you, it's like, you still look at the women like, it's not like it's stopping the men from, you know what I mean? Just because you're covering up the women doesn't mean that it's fixing the issue. Yeah,
it doesn't. Like, they're still beautiful.
They're still beautiful. Yeah. And you probably still lusted after them.
I didn't because as I got to be 13, 14, I was sent away for that when I really wasn't doing it. Right.
But they claimed that you were.
Yeah. So my dad said, you're doing this. sent me to live in a house, with my brothers until I did good enough to come back with family, essentially. So.
Damn, I think I might start our episode with asking you about that, because that's tea.
But so you felt like you couldn't even, there must have been some sort of training there that you were getting, if you didn't feel like you could look at yourself in any way.
So to go back to your question of like, what did you think about sex? Did you even know about sex? I think the only reason I knew is because the order marries off girls so fucking, can I swear? Are you going to publicly? Okay. They marry them so fucking young that I was 15 and my friends were getting married, and then my friends were coming to me like, I had sex.
Oh, yeah?
And they would tell me things, and I was like, what? But also, I honestly think that, and maybe this wasn't a thing in the Warren Jeffs, or maybe it was, and it was just a hush-hush, there was a lot of kids having sex. I'm like whispering, because it's so naughty. But there was a lot of kids that were like exploring that, and I honestly think that it's because there was a lot of sexual abuse that happened.
There was a lot of kids having sex.
Yep. But
that's great. I mean, to some degree it makes sense. But I think that's one of the reasons Dad isolated his kids so much. I think when he was young, his dad's family was really bad that way. But one of the things Dad would tell the mothers is, you leave those children by themselves in a room for 1 minute, well, they could do something that ruins them eternally.
Oh my gosh, so much guilt. No, I think it's so weird that in our group it was so like, don't be alone with your brothers, don't da-da-da. But there's a statistic that when we were filming Escaping Polygamy, one of the producers like did all the math with all of the info or intel they had on the order, and they said that the odds of sexual abuse in the order is 1 in 2 for women. 1 in 2 by the time that they're an adult.
Wow.
And I think it's my opinion is I think it's because there's lack of education. There's also like the way that they groom us is to be like submissive and obedient as women. And then when there's sexual abuse, the times I've seen it, when a woman speaks up, she is shamed. So like, just like when David O. Kingston went to prison for raping his niece, when I started to dive in and be like, wait, so Marianne was raped? That's what it says online. They're like, she wanted it. Like, they victim blame so hard that anyone who speaks up, they regret it later. So because of that, they're focusing on blaming the victim and not actually getting the perpetrator. It becomes way more rampant because they're brushing it under the rug. So like, if someone's being a pedophile and then it gets brushed under the rug, they're going to keep doing it, So like, the accountability is not put on that. And so that's why I think the sexual abuse was so heavy in the order. Or is so heavy. I shouldn't say was. Is so heavy.
Yeah, I feel like the sexual abuse in the order might probably be worse than it is in the FLDS.
You think so?
I don't know. I do, because at least in later years, I'm not saying like Dad, he was sexually abusing his own wives, but
and his children.
And his children.
Jeffs. She admitted to open up.
One of the weird conversations I had with some of the mothers when I was considering leaving was about Dad having sex with his young wives, and one of their big arguments was like, hey, he was going to take care of her all her life, like this isn't just a random sexual encounter. And we would have these 3-hour arguments with the older mothers,
Really?
Because they were like defending it in every possible way. Like, I don't know if they were just trying to make it make sense in their minds or whatever, but
yeah, I think that I found that a lot with victims in the order. When they can't fully process that they were a victim, they will victim blame other people. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like at the time when you're in it, you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're right. You're just a kid, like listening to all of this shame and guilt is being put on you, and you just soak it up because you're like, yep, I'm trash. I deserve this. Warren's the best and I'm the worst. But as you get older and you leave and you realize like this was all stuff that wasn't even mine to carry. This was something that they wanted to put onto me that was nothing to do with me. Do you have maybe I shouldn't wait for my episode for this because I'm gonna be interviewing the hell out of you. But yeah, do you feel like you still have shame tied to sex and all of that stuff?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I have a hard time just talking to girls in a sense that, in a dating sense,
Yeah,
like type of stuff that I feel like, oh, I shouldn't be doing that. So let's get out of here.
really. I could totally see how. I think a lot of ex-order members have that too, where it's obviously not a natural thing for them to be talking to a woman. So even just like talking to a woman at the grocery store that's checking your stuff out, like the cashier, that could even be something that's like, because it was so. Marianne told me that in some of the sermons that the women had to be behind the men as to not make the men's eyes wander.
Oh, my whole life. So earlier crickers, they didn't really be this way, but for my whole life, the boys sat on the front row of every good words, whatever it was. And, since I was 2 years old, so that's just how it was. Meetings in the crick, people were still mixing up, but I was down in Texas, and the men sit in the front and the women sit in the back.
Did it make you feel like shameful just for being a man?
Yeah, I think every FLDS person or man has some degree of shame for literally just being a man.
Existing.
And I really think it's because my dad had these bad sexual problems, and so he made it so dang strict for everybody.
That's a good point. He's like, I lust after everybody and their dog, so you guys are bad. I already know what you're thinking because I lust after my own kids. So he's assuming that you're doing the same thing when you're not.
Yeah. Well, I got to get to the rest of your story.
I'm like, I'm ruining this for my own episode. But yeah, so you asked about the sexual stuff. I think we got through that, right? I knew what sex was.
Yeah, so you're 14, you're going on some dates, you're kind of being public school. You're being a little bit rebel. That's crazy. There's this Mormon boy, and he's literally a Mormon.
I know. He it was not like what I think my dad was like Warren, like, you're probably sleeping with him. But it was literally like, he held my hand once, and I was like, ooh, butterflies, right? But it was so naughty. Like, that's the naughtiest thing. Not only did you do that, but you did it with an outside boy, And so I got pulled out of school for that. That's why I stopped going to public school.
Okay. Yep. So would have been better to do it with a boy in the group? Or not really?
I think so. And I also did that with boys in the group too. I was in the order. I was the town slut because and a lot that, like I said before, though, a lot of girls were doing that stuff because which is so crazy. It's like no matter how much you try to like make them, like, honestly, you know that term, strict parents make sneaky kids?
Yeah.
That was true for the order members. But so after that happened, I got put into Penn Foster. So it's a very popular thing in the order where the kids go to Penn Foster, especially girls, because they don't want to educate the girls.
What's that?
Penn Foster is a homeschool. So we would meet at Enzyme Learning Center, but it was in room 10, so it was like the room at the end of the school. So all these kids were doing Penn Foster to get certified. And I remember sitting there trying to do the Penn Foster course material. And one of Paul's wives was like the teacher, and she's like, let me know if you need any help. And I was like, hey, I don't know how to do this math problem. And so she comes over, and she's not very educated either.
Yeah.
So she's like, just do your best. So I cheated my way through it. There was another kid that passed Penn Foster, and she put all the answers on her email, and she gave us the password to her email.
Oh,
so
wow.
We would go on her email and get all the answers and pass it. Is this legal? Is this legal to be telling this? But that's how half of the kids in the order got their Penn Foster degrees.
That's crazy. And did the order somewhat just approve of that?
They did, yeah. Well, Penn Foster was the school that we all went to because they would rather us go to Penn Foster than to be like being with boys or like realizing that there's a world outside of the order, right? So like I only went to public school because my mom was like, well, my kid can't not be educated. So she, because they tried homeschool for a little bit, but they realized that I wasn't learning anything. I don't know how they realized that. They were just like, man is a little bit stupid. I don't know what it was, but my mom was not born in the order. She was on the outside. So she was like, what's the harm of letting her go to public school? So then I went, and then she was like, oh, that's the harm. That's the harm of putting her in public school. She's going to date boys. So then they put me in Penn Foster. And so it's a promoted thing for girls, especially to go to Penn Foster. I graduated at 15. Wow. I got my degree at 15, my high school diploma.
And they kind of just give it to you because
you passed the classes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't know I cheated.
Yeah. When I was growing up, if you cheated, you were the devil,
My only option was to cheat.
Yeah.
Like, how was I supposed to know how to do the quadratic equation when Paul's wife is like, Do your
best.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the reason why, so a lot of them actually, I had a friend who she lived in, so Idaho, the order has a farm in Idaho, and it's the potato farm out there. And so she lived out there. She was going to public school. And she told me that they pulled her out of public school because she was getting married. They didn't want her to be like married, getting pregnant, and then like being in public school and having people like wonder what the hell's going on. So they pulled her out of school so that she could get married and have babies. Because as women, that's really our main priority, is to procreate for the order.
Yeah.
And that was my fate, basically.
And I think that's probably true in the FLDS.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to ask, what was home life like in the FLDS? We were doing chores at home, going to school. You were always checking in with the caretaker. For you, what was home life like? You would get home from school. You have your siblings. You're not with any of your other siblings that are from different mothers, mm-hmm. right? You're just with your own mother's siblings, right?
Yep.
And so what were you doing? Was it pretty lax? Did you have to do chores? How strict was it?
The day-to-day as an order member for me was, I'm just going to give you an example of a specific day. So I would go to Ensign Learning Center, right? Go to my school.
At 7 a.m. or something.
Yeah. Do my little meditations. Which, by the way, after the meditations, we would have to recite this. So we'd meditate for 5 minutes, put our head up and go, "It is my firm resolve and fixed purpose to give my all to the Lord, my time, my talents, all that I am or ever expected to be, to the establishment of Zion and building up of the kingdom of God upon the earth. True happiness is not found doing what you want to do, but learning to like to do the things you ought to do." And it goes on.
Wow, you said that pretty good. You remember it still.
I don't know if we said it in school, but we said it like because it was 7 a.m. noon. Like that was a recite, like something that was drilled in us. So we do the meditations, right? What did you guys have anything like that?
That is so cultish.
I know. Imagine in our family home evening with 32 kids and my dad and his 3 wives. Imagine everyone lifting their head up at the same time. "It is my firm resolve or fixed purpose to give my all to the Lord." It was culty.
Yeah, you still remember that.
Yeah, I will never forget. But so we go through the school, right? Then I would wait for the bus to pick me up. The bus would pick me up, drop me off at my job.
Was it a Kingston bus?
It was a Kingston bus. Well, because it was Kingston school. So it was like one of the many wives of the order was driving the bus, picked us up, picked all these kids up from elementary school, would drop us off at order businesses so we could go work for the Lord. So one of my first jobs was for the order bank because we had our own banking system. So I was in the back, like they would give us these slips that had information of like money going in and out, and I would just have to write in the computer like the amounts over and over and over and over and over and over for like until the sun would go down, and then I would go home. So then I would go home for my short amount of time that I was home.
And this was when you were 15?
No, elementary school.
Oh.
8, 7.
Whoa.
Yeah, some of my friends like 3, 4, 5 years old were working for the order. We literally like slave labor. Like these kids, to me, looking back, at the time it was just normal, right? Because it was like my childhood. But looking back, it really felt like as soon as a baby was born, the parents and the adults saw dollar signs. Like, how can we make money off of this person? And I remember as a kid feeling like my existence, I owed. I was owing things. Like, I owed just for being born. Did you feel like that at all? Like, because I was born, I owe everybody my time, my talents, and all that I am.
Yeah, I think I felt that's interesting. I think in the Kingston group, it's a lot more about the money. Whereas I feel like in the FLDS, it's more, you're doing work, but it's generally not for money in any way. At least for me.
Okay.
Down there in Texas, there was no money anywhere on the land. They might have used money off the land, but on the land, no money involved.
But didn't most of the boys get like pulled out of education to do like building
so
things?
Down there in Colorado City, then a lot of the boys just straight up didn't really get taken care of. And yeah, got sent out to do work jobs. But down there in Texas, if you were considered one of the more elite people, I guess you might say, then no, you definitely went through school, and money just didn't really matter. What mattered is that somebody knew what you were doing all the time, every day, more.
Okay. Interesting. So in the order, the kids that were in your status, because when I became friends with Marianne Barlow, she's my bitch. She, whenever I would open up about the order, she'd be like, "We have someone like that in the FLDS too." So like the inner circle that you're talking about, Warren Jeffs, they had that for Paul too. It was like Paul's kids got way more. Oh shit! Is that light off?
Yeah. I better check it. This one's still on.
Oh, I should check on Priscilla. She was like filming videos in her car. We have a TikTok together. Randomly decided to start making TikToks together, and it started blowing up. Like millions of. Are you on TikTok?
No.
You need to be on TikTok. I'm telling you.
We should make a TikTok before you go.
Yeah. Don't let me forget.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna make sure she's okay out there. But yeah, if we made a TikTok, I would love to like market off the fact you're Warren Jeffs' kid.
Yeah.
You should be making money off that, if anything, right?
Yeah. If my dad's gonna do stupid shit, I'm gonna make money off of it.
Seriously, profit off that shit. Okay, hang on, she messaged me.
I mean, she could come and sit in here if she needs to. I wouldn't care if, she was sitting right there by you.
Yeah, and she could even like add to the stories.
Yeah,
if
I have another mic
something.
I could throw on here too.
Yeah. You should. Well, she's always in Vegas, but the next time she's down here, you should interview her.
All right.
She's got some. So I have my story of like they tried to make me marry my cousin, but her story, I interviewed her, and I don't know if FLDS had anything like this, but because she wouldn't marry who they wanted her to marry, they threw her into a rehab, locked her up because she was trying to leave. So it's because she was a minor, they threw her into this rehab called Lifeline, and they told them so to get thrown into a rehab called Lifeline, which is for minors, they have to be like, my kid's addicted to drugs or sex or alcohol, and because you can test for alcohol and drugs, so they said sex because you can't test for that. Oh, she's addicted to sex, so they threw her in there. 2 big guys showed up, grabbed her, put her in the van, and threw her into rehab for 3 months? Yeah, I think it was 3 months she was in there because she wasn't doing what they wanted her to do.
That's crazy.
But I think in FLDS they do something similar where they just put them in South Dakota or some shit.
Yeah, you just if I was 12 years old and you came to me and told me this story about one of my sisters or one of the other FLDS members that wouldn't marry somebody because when the prophet told them to, and then you told me, well, the prophet then sent them off to live in this house of hiding for 3 years by themselves, I would have just laughed and been like, of course. Like,
you're like, what did you think would happen?
Yeah. What did you think? You aren't obeying the prophet? What is your problem?
Yeah. Yep. I remember that type of thinking in the order too. Like, what? Well, you deserve to get slapped then.
Yeah.
Sorry, she just messaged back. I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
okay, we're good.
So you're 14, 15, you get pulled out of private school, or you get pulled out of public school. Now, when do you first start thinking about leaving the order?
So I ran away. I think my first time running away was when my mom was, because I got spanked all the time. Did you get spankings?
I didn't get spankings.
Wow. Spankings were such a ritual that I remember going shopping for the spanking stick.
Really?
Yeah. I think it was Home Depot. My mom was like testing out the stick on her hand, and I was just like, ugh, hopefully it's like a skinny stick that will break. But so she would spank us, and sometimes like a lot of the teachings in the order, and I believe it was like to humiliate the kids, but bare bottom spankings. So the order taught that if your kid is even 6 months old, they should be obedient.
Really?
So the abuse was rampant. Yeah, and my mom said, raise them by the rod. That was in the Bible. Raise them by the rod. Do you remember the rod that brought to the fruit?
Yeah.
So she was like, the rod is a spanking stick. I'm like, whatever.
So in the FLDS, it's your child must be obedient by the time they're 3 years old.
What do they do if they're not?
Well, punishments range from, sitting on the toilet or putting your nose in the corner.
Yeah, we did get corner time too. And I remember falling asleep in the corner. That's how long I was in there.
Wow. I remember my brother has a lot of bad luck sitting on the toilet. He would sit on the toilet almost every day for like 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. I would rather be obedient.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. So what they would do is like a spanking, but then they would do a long lecture before the spanking. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, just spank me. Like it was worse. The mental abuse was worse than the physical, because the physical I can heal from it and it's a bruise. The mental was like so much like mind fuck that it took a lot longer to heal from.
Yeah, I feel like we would only get like a spanking if we did something terrible. Mm-hmm. But with us, the mothers were always right there all the time telling you exactly what to do. Like always. There wasn't that much opportunity to disobey.
Yeah. What was your question that got me on the spankings? Because I feel like there was more I was going to say to it.
Yeah, I was just wondering what you were doing. You got pulled out of public school. I was wondering what the first time you felt like you were talking about your story running away, your first story running away.
Okay, yeah. First story running away was I was so sick of getting spankings. And
how old?
I was only like 12, 13 at this point.
Okay.
And my mom was like, I don't even remember what I did, but I did something. And she went to go grab the stick. And I was like, this again. And I realized something, like I can't win the beating because she's a lot bigger than me and I'm a little girl, but I can outrun her. So as she was getting the stick, I bolted out the door. Okay. And she's like chasing me with the stick. And I was like, go. I went to the fence that like separated the yard to the like back area. It was like a field area with like machines and stuff. And I sat on the fence and I looked behind me. And my mom was like, if you jump that fence, I'm going to call the police. And I looked her in the eye and I was like, ee! And I jumped while I was smiling in her face. Because I also knew she wouldn't call the police. Because the order is very, and probably FLDS this way too, you don't call the cops.
No.
I knew it was a bluff. So I jumped and I hid in this shed, which I actually had put food there. Like I had planned to run away. And I was like, this is the moment. And I went into this shed. It was like dirt floor. And I was like, this is my home now. Okay. But I was young, right? And so I only really stayed there until I like realized I like didn't really have enough food, and I went back home. That was the first attempt of running away. I had run away multiple times before I actually left. Like there were so many attempts.
I was trying to understand what made you run away at such a young age. Mm-hmm. But I think I understand better now that it's because of the because of the bad spankings. And
I think when you're younger, you don't fully understand why you hate it there and why you like want to die. Like I became suicidal very young.
Really?
And I don't know if like self-harm was a thing. Like, sorry, trigger warning for viewers. We're going to talk about self-harm. I hate censoring because it's like so many viewers actually struggle with the same thing. And by censoring, we're not allowed to talk about it. So this is something that I think should be talked about more. So many members are suicidal. So many members were cutting themselves.
Really?
Including me. Yes, because it was, and we didn't, here's the weird thing, like we don't have a lot of access to like internet and stuff. So it wasn't like we were getting inspired. We just like naturally went to self-harm. Because we were shit on so much as women from the order.
Wow.
So I, from a young age, had like suicide ideation. Like I would daydream about dying.
Really?
And because it was like, I didn't know, because when you're taught not to have your emotions, just to keep sweet, like you guys, right? You just have to be this robot for them. You suppress so much that you don't know why you're so like cutting yourself. You don't understand why you're doing it. You just do it and it feels good. But when I look back, I'm like, oh, it's because I was slut shamed. I was victim blamed. There was so much being projected onto me. There was so much expectation. I felt like the scum underneath the earth, right? As a woman in the order, my only purpose was to marry my cousin and have babies. That was my only purpose. And if I wanted anything else, then whore, you know?
Yeah, that is crazy. I never felt like cutting myself, you know.
Really? You know why I think, and this might just be a projection, you may have had a little bit of like, I'm in Warren's family.
Yes, there was definitely that, but also I was taught that the worst sin you could commit was suicide, you know.
We were too.
Okay.
We were too. We were taught that suicide is murder, and that's against the Ten Commandments. But did that stop people? No, there was suicide in the order.
Really?
My cousin, Daniel's daughter, she was being abused so bad. Her name is Rachel. This is a public story. We talked about it on Escaping Polygamy. She was being abused so bad by Daniel. Daniel's the same guy who beat his daughter Marianne. Marianne, the one that made David go to prison because he was raping her. So Daniel was a very abusive person. He was abusing Rachel. And Rachel was 14, went to police in Utah, told them everything, had the evidence on her body of what he was doing to her. They still sent her back home.
Really?
And then she committed suicide.
Wow.
It's a really... And this is why I used to censor myself more. Like, I don't want to say suicide on YouTube because I don't want AdSense, blah, blah, blah. But it's also like, this is a real issue. And we need to be okay with talking about it, because how can we resolve it? By not acknowledging it? No. So for me and for a lot, I didn't know anyone else was going through this while I was there. Rachel's suicide happened after I left. And I remember like bawling when I heard it, because I was like, that could have been me. 100% could have been me. But when I was there, going through this like self-harm phase and like just feeling like shit all the time, but not being able to express myself, because like any negative feelings was like, I mean, I'm sure you guys felt this too, like you can't be jealous, there's all these feelings that you're just supposed to repress. So I felt like I had nowhere to turn to for these emotions, so I would just, cut myself, having no idea that other people were going through the same thing. After I left and I found a community of ex-members, all of them said the same thing. So wow. It was wild. All the girls anyways. I don't think I ever talked to boys about it. So I wonder if it's different for boys versus girls.
So that is crazy. I don't know the FLDS people felt like cutting themselves. I never heard of that, Yeah. Okay. So it's I guess it makes me want to dig a little bit deeper as to why, do you know if it was mostly just the women, or?
I think it may have, because in the order, men still, I'm not going to discredit that the men, a lot of them had a shitty life, especially if they weren't Kingston. If they were less Kingston, good luck getting a wife. Good, you know what I mean? I'm sure that happened in Warren, maybe.
Yeah. So actually Warren Jeffs never married any of his sons. I'm sure he would have. But yeah, I mean, if you were FLDS and you were one of those kids that just wasn't super close, you probably weren't ever going to get married. Yep. That's where kind of the Lost Boys come in.
Really? So the Lost Boys are the like lesser, the forgotten.
They're the ones that, I guess, in the group's mind were less obedient. But in the boys' minds, they had tried. Nobody gave them a chance. So they're going to be rebellious. Right.
That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, to go back to like was self-harming something that was male versus female, I think it did happen more as female, because the men were definitely raised like differently than the women. The women, like I said before, only purpose is to get married to who they want you to marry and have kids. The men, it was like, you can be a numbered man. You can get the Melchizedek priesthood. It was like, narcissism was kind of being bestowed upon them. Like you're the reason.
That's a good way to put that. I've never heard that. So what was the feelings like? You feel like cutting yourself, and this is, among a lot of women. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to understand the emotions that lead up to that. Is it just you don't feel anything until you do that, or?
One of my friends talked about it, and she said that it was like a drug. It was like she would, before a function, she would have to like do that to get the release. And then she would feel good at the function. That's different than mine. Mine was like, I I had so much pressure on me, and I had so much that I was dealing with, that the only way that I felt I could express it was on my body. Like, in a weird way, it was like, I want to externally look the way that I internally feel. Does that make sense?
Wow.
Like, I needed to cut myself to bleed to feel something.
Interesting.
And to this day, I have a hard time really fully understanding it, because I repressed it for a long time. I had a lot of shame for it. I still have a scar. I only did it right here on my thigh. And I have a scar that's still there. And for the longest time, I was like, I need a tattoo to cover that up. Like, it was shameful. But I just recently was like, that's a part of my life. That's not something to be ashamed of, because where I came from led me to do that. It's not that I'm like this shitty person. I was a child. And I'm like forgiving myself for beating myself up for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting.
But yeah, before I forget, because I know I'm gonna, because I'm drinking. That act was around the time too that like I was like daydreaming of suicide. And we're gonna skip ahead a little bit. So I'd run away multiple times, and I knew I wanted to leave. I was like around 17 years old, and my dad knew too. I had told him like, I'm going to leave the order, and then he told me to my face, I would rather die than leave the order, and I hope you feel the same way. And I took that as, oh, he'd rather me kill myself than me leave, because I'm sure this is the same with Warren. Like, it's a bad name for his kids to leave. Like, it makes him look bad. So don't you dare. And also, your salvation, it's better for you to die in the group than to leave and be cast out into eternal darkness.
I remember when I was 8 years old, after I got baptized, my dad taught this. You know, he would read from Brigham Young, and Brigham Young says something like, I would rather see my son's throat slit, or something like that, than see him leave the work of God, or something like that. And I remember saying in my prayers, will you take my life before I leave? Before I leave the work. And one of the reasons why is because Heber Kimball would say that in his prayers.
Yeah. Wow.
So I can totally understand where you're coming from there.
So it's almost, here's the weird thing. They shame suicide. They're like, you're going to go to hell if you kill yourself. But they say shit like that, like, I'd rather die than leave the order and slit my throat, or else, you know what I mean? It's like, you guys, I idolize suicide without even realizing it. Like, you'd rather be dead than leave, yet killing yourself is so bad. But then they also project that, like, that's the better option. And if you hate your life here, might as well do that. That's how I felt, definitely, for a while. Sorry, I think she just... I just want to, because she's the type of person that's like, I'm just going to wait in this car for like 5 hours because I want to make sure that you guys are. I think a lot of people from the Order and FLDS are like people pleasers.
Oh, 100%. Have you kind of had to get over that?
People pleasing? Still getting over it.
Me too.
Like, if someone tries to like, I don't know, even like for a while, like rip me off. If someone were trying to sell me something, I'm like kind of interested, and then they're like $500. I'm like, do you want 700? Here you go. You know, like, it's such an easy victim, basically.
Yeah. I have one brother that isn't this way. He's so outgoing, but the rest of us, we will sit there and deal with a problem and not say anything about it until it gets so bad that we all blow up.
Yeah.
And then it's this huge deal, and it's like, why didn't you say something?
Because I was scared.
Yeah.
Yep. I've had that issue for a long time of like, I would rather me suffer than you, even if it's a stranger. Mm-hmm. Even if it's, because I think the way we're groomed is you sacrifice who you are for the religion. So you're so used to abandoning yourself that it's just the norm to like take care of everybody else but you, which is so unfair. You have to, and I don't know if you went through this of like, when you leave, for me, I was like a shell of a person. I don't even know who I was because I wasn't allowed to know who Amanda was. I was what the cult wanted me to be. And so coming out, I'm like thinking that all these things are my personality, but it's really just trauma responses, like projections of what they wanted me to be. And even my inner voice in my head was their voice talking, like the shame, the guilt, the manipulation. Like I became my own worst enemy in a way as I was trying to heal, which is why I keep saying like therapy was so good, because I was able to talk out what all these issues were, but it took a long time for me to be like, oh, this thing I've been doing for years is actually not good for me. Have you noticed anything like, oh, wait a minute?
Oh, 100%. I was 100% who my dad wanted to be and absolutely nothing else.
Wow.
100%, you know. And Dad, he was so, like, detail-oriented, you know, from never sticking your hands in your pockets to, you know, what you should think and memorize this verse. And when you see a girl, we'll think of her father, right? Just everything. All your thoughts were predetermined, and
they do such a good job at making sure they do that when you're a kid, so that as a grown or like more developed person, adult, whatever, like teen, you're doing it to yourself. They don't even have to do it anymore.
100%.
Yep. I hate that.
And so when you ask, you know, did you have these crushes on girls or whatever? It's like, no, because
it was evil.
I was 100% programmed to not. And some of my brothers, I think, did better than me at just not doing that. But a lot of us. But
that's wild.
We got to get to the rest of your story here.
I know. How long have we been going? It's 8 now?
Yeah.
When did we start?
Like 7:10 or something.
Okay, so it's about an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
But so you run away when you're 12. You run away several more times. But when do you start thinking, really, okay, I've got to leave this group?
15 was when I knew I was going to leave. Like the 12 and like running from the spanking stick, that was like, I'm just getting out of this situation. I don't know why I want to leave exactly, but I just hate being here. But it was always the solutions were like short term, never permanent. By 15, I knew I was going to leave. I didn't know how, but I knew I was going to leave at some point. And I tell the story a lot, and I don't want it to be misinterpreted, because it's not me being like, God gave me direction to leave. But at the time, that's what I felt. I ran away. I was 15. I ran away with this boy that was in the order, but he was from the Idaho potato farm, so he wasn't. It's Kingston.
Oh, I've been there.
Really?
Yeah.
Why were you there?
So I was over in Teutonia pouring a...
You mean Territon?
No.
Where's Teutonia?
Teutonia is just right... It's about 20 minutes from their farm, little city. Okay. I was pouring a slab, and this guy that... I was FLDS at the time, so I was full sleeve.
In the hot sun.
Yeah, and we were pouring this slab, and we had this pump pumping for us. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys came over to see how this pump works, because he was going to pour his house. And he looked so much like us. He was sitting there watching us the whole time. I was like, what is your problem? So when we got done pouring, I went over and said, who are you? Like, are you FLDS or who are you? And he's like, oh, I'm from the Kingston group. Who are you? And he was a Brown. Yep,
the Browns. The guy I had a crush on, Brown.
Okay.
In the Brown family, anyways.
Yeah, so anyway, we get talking. He's like, are you guys staying? I said, so are you guys just like faithful Kingstons, or what are you doing out here? And he's like, yeah. Are you faithful? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm faithful. He's like, well,
you're like, I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
That's basically what that means.
Yeah, and so he says, well, will you come over and help me pour my house slab? And so I said, yeah, I'll come over there and help you pour it. So I went over there a couple days later and helped them pour their house, you know.
Wow. Was that your first interaction with Kingstons?
Yeah.
Wow. Honestly, like the Idaho farm was like some of the best memories, because it was still the order, but it was like the people that weren't in the inner circle, so it was more relaxed. And so when they had to be on the farm to do the potatoes and all that stuff, so a lot of them would have to like stream the church. Like on Sundays it was like live streamed, and they had this little church house out there, but they were like the ones who were closer. And I think this is how it is with Warren too. The closer you get to the leadership, the more fucked up it is.
Yes.
So
the more rules you got to follow, and arbitrary decisions you got to just go by.
Right. So even though you kind of had a chip on your shoulder because you're Warren's kid, you had it also a lot stricter, and your reputation mattered a lot more because you were the leader's child.
Yeah. One of the things about going over to the Browns is I had considered leaving at that point.
Really? How old were you?
I was 23.
Okay, so you considered leaving and you went and did work for them, okay.
Yeah, but I was so confused because they're the guys have these long sleeves. but all the women were wearing just tight jeans and everything.
In the order?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
You know, not like you know, they were modest, what you would consider modest, but for me, I was only used to seeing, you know,
no legs.
I didn't think that was modest to me, but I was so confused because I went over there and, you know, the girls are just kind of with the boys and, you know, out
they
there.
They could intermingle.
They could intermingle. And I was just like, it seems to me like these guys are just normal Gentiles. And what's the difference here?
They were probably siblings talking to each other.
They were.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they were. But I was thinking to myself, what's the difference between these guys and Gentiles? And as I, you know.
So you were judging them.
Yeah. And as I left, then I even thought that about, you know, I used to think that about Mormons. What's the difference between a Mormon and a Gentile? Like, there's no difference. But now I get it. Like,
did you think at all like, oh, they're a little bit better than a Gentile because they're living polygamy at least?
Yeah, I thought they're probably living by a lot more rules than even Mormons are, but
still going to hell.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep, us too. It's like whenever anyone asks, like, wait, so how did you as a Kingston feel about like FLDS, AUB, blah blah blah? It was like, the best way I can describe it is high school rivalry. We're the best. You guys all suck, even though we're all doing the same fucking thing.
Yeah.
Except for we did incest. And you guys did
incest.
But to go back to your like wanting to leave things, so I was secretly dating a brown boy. The reason I say he was a brown boy, well, he was in the Brown family. Technically, his last name wasn't Brown because he was of a second or third wife, so his last name was fake. But he was in the Brown family. And we were like secretly seeing each other, and I had like ran across the state lines to Idaho with him, which is illegal, taking a minor across state lines, which I didn't know. I don't know the laws. I was in a cult.
Was he 18?
No.
Oh.
So my dad, come to find out, I didn't even know this till after I left. He told me, he's like, your dad got a restraining order on me. And I was like, huh? And he said, did you know that your dad apologized for me because I left the order and he thought it was his fault? He said, I'm sorry that you left if it was my fault. And I was like, whoa, he thought it was his fault? And he was like, well, it kind of was. I was like, what? So I ran away with this boy, and he was about my age. We were both like 15 at the time, and I brought my quad. Did you guys have quads?
What's that?
Okay, so to anyone watching, I think you guys did. A quad it's the Bible, but it's also the Book of Mormon in it. It's all lumped in together, so it's a big version.
No.
What? What were your Bibles?
We had the King James version of the Bible, but then the Book of Mormon.
So you had it separate?
Yeah, separate.
Oh, we had quads that had the Bible, the Old Testament, New Testament, and then the Book of Mormon, Pearl of Great Price, Doctrine and Covenant. So it was all into one. So even after I left, I thought that anyone who was Christian believed in Joseph Smith. Because that's how it was marketed to me. I thought it was all part of the Bible. I still to this day will quote the Bible, and people will correct me and be like, that's not in the Bible. I'm like, fuck!
Yeah, go to a Christian church and start quoting Joseph Smith.
I know. I felt so dumb for a lot of years, for sure. But so I had my quad, and I ran away with this boy, and he like dropped me off at this outsider's house that I like knew of, and they were like related to me in some way, and they took me in for a second. And I started bawling and praying. And I was like, dear Heavenly Father, because we don't say God. You guys probably didn't say God either.
Right.
Dear Heavenly Father. To viewers that don't know, God in our church was against, like, it was like saying the Lord's name in vain. They said that the Ten Commandments say, thou shalt not say thy Lord's name in vain. And that's God, which is so stupid. So we said Heavenly Father. Sorry, just to give context.
Yeah, and we did too. Heavenly Father.
Mm-hmm. Dear Heavenly Father, if the order is right, please just give me a sign, like let me know. And if the order is right, I will live polygamy. I will be the best order member ever. But if it's right, why does it feel so wrong? Just give me some confirmation that it's right. Bawling, snot dripping out of my nose. But if it's wrong, I'm going to leave this place. I was already ready. Like it felt right to leave at this point. Because also the boy I ran away with, they didn't want me to marry because he wasn't Kingston. Anyways, beside the point. Praying, blah, 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 snot dripping out of my nose. I opened my quad. I am not lying. I feel like it sounds like I'm lying because it's so crazy. I opened my Bible after my prayer. The first words I read, it was a random page. First words I read said, there will be false prophets among you. Chills. I was like, that's my answer. And so to me, I was like, God's telling me this. now that I'm like out and like processing, I'm like, it could have been maybe chance. Maybe I have like ancestors watching out for me. I don't know, because I don't know fully what I believe in now. Definitely don't believe in the order God, because when I was there, I thought 100%, as I was reading the quad and all, this time in my life, I 100% believed that I did something wrong in my life before this life that made me a woman.
Really?
Because God hates women. I fully believed that.
Wow.
Yeah, because I don't know if you guys believe this, but in the order we believed that your number one choice in marriage is so important because your kids in heaven are waiting to be born. Did you guys have that?
Yeah. We believe there was chosen spirits in heaven waiting to be born. Mm-hmm. But I guess that didn't translate to being bad because you were a woman. Well,
like what I'm saying is like, we believed that there was this like predetermined things that happened before we were born. Like, this is your family that you're going to have before. So I thought that whatever happened in that meeting beforehand was bad. And God was like, you're going to be a woman because you're pissing me off. But just because also like the great war in heaven, how like the white people were decided and the black people were decided, I thought that something else decided my gender. And that it was bad because this fucking sucks being a woman.
I guess the way I always viewed it is if you were a woman in heaven, you were going to be a woman here. I didn't think...
Yeah, and I think I just made that up in my head because I was like, why did you do this to me? Yeah.
Well, it's pretty bad for the women in the order. I feel like... I don't think a lot of FLDS women were just thinking about killing themselves. I don't know. For sure. I mean, I haven't asked. My sisters have some pretty bad stories, but I think your mental pressure was different.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of, from a very young age, like, just be ready to marry whoever God says, even if it's your brother. And we were told things like, it's okay if you don't love him, you'll learn to love him. And so a lot of girls were marrying their siblings, their uncles, their... cousins, and just hoping that they'll learn to love them, that's such a nightmare, right? And even while you're in there, you're like, hopefully I don't get direction on him. And then, so they told us that direction was dreams, right? So sometimes I have a dream of a guy that I didn't like, and I'd be like, oh my God, I hope that's not direction. But I would never tell anyone because I didn't want to like solidify it.
Interesting. Yeah, in the FLDS, we were taught that dreams were only right if pretty much they lined up with what the prophet said.
Yep, that was us too. So we were taught about direction, but I remember saying to my parents, like, hey, I that boy I ran away with, I told them I'm pretty sure I had direction on him, and I think this was before I ran away with him. My dad said, he like kind of laughed, and he was like, I don't know who you're supposed to marry, but it's not him. But in hindsight, I think my dad did know who I was supposed to marry. I really genuinely think that they have a list and they're like divvying out the women and where they're going. Because as I got older in the order, I started to notice that any Kingston women would marry a more Kingston man. So me, I'm the child of a half-brother of Paul. So I was going to marry a direct descendant of Paul and his brothers because I had to marry closer to Jesus Christ's bloodline. So they were, in their own way, making their own race of Christ's pure blood. Like kind of like the royalty, the royal families,
I feel like the Kingstons are kings of incest. Like that is why they have that last name.
Yeah.
They are incest.
Incest is best. And... while we're on the topic of incest, I have to drop this tea that I actually just found out. So while I was growing up, I found out that they were getting blood tested. I was asking my friends, I was pretty social in the group, so I was like in a lot of different friend groups in the order. And so one of the girls talked about how she got blood tested. And so I was like, wait, what? Because we don't really believe in going to the doctors and stuff. So I'm like, why are you getting blood tested? So I started doing my research, asking all of my friends, realizing that Paul's kids and all of Paul's brothers' kids were getting blood tested. And some were told it's just to see if they're sick. It's just to, check their, whatever. They were just lying. And then some flat out were told it's to see who you're compatible with.
Really?
To see who you can marry. So I was like, oh my God, that's why. Because a lot of people are like, how come there's not a lot of people with deformities, with physical, like, because you don't see a lot of like deformities in the order. Like, you would think you'd see more. There still is some. You would think you'd see more with how much inbreeding there is.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, it's because of blood testing. But then I recently just interviewed Catherine, my cousin Catherine. She just recently left. She was a polygamist in the order. She married her uncle, and her mom also married her uncle. So 2 lines of incest. And she was getting pregnant with her uncle. And Paul had a meeting with her and said, because you're so closely related, you have like a higher chance of having children with deformities. So we're going to check and test. And so they were testing if the baby was going to be having deformities. And the baby was. So Paul said, you need to abort the baby.
Really?
Flat out. He also was like, I know it's hard to get abortion. So here's a list of women in the order who have had abortions for the same reason that you can go get like, therapy with, basically.
Wow.
And one of those wives on that list was his own wife, which was his half-sister. So which is wild, because I'm sure in your group, as is ours, abortion is murder.
Oh, it's murder.
Yet, if Paul says, then it's okay.
That I don't think there was an exception for that. There's a story about my dad. One of my brothers is missing a leg, and he was born. He was born without a leg. But the doctor, there's this story. My dad was there in the hospital, and the doctor's saying, "Hey, we should do an abortion because, this guy, he's missing a leg, and things are messed up." And my dad was just like furious and saying, "No way, no way, we're not going to do abortion." But yeah.
How does that child feel about that decision?
One of the crazy things about him is he's out there on the construction site.
With one leg?
With one leg. He has a fake leg, right?
Yeah.
And he's hopping around everywhere, but he literally just works construction with one.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That's wild. Is he still in?
He's still in.
Dang. That makes sense, though, that that would be the stance that Warren has on that. That's how I thought. All of the order, any circumstance meant you cannot take that life because that's murder. Because that's how I was raised. And then come to find out
that it's okay once in a while.
Yep, every once in a while. True.
So, then when do you decide? Okay, I'm gonna leave. You were 15, but
yeah. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I know my answer. I'm gonna leave one day. I just don't know how. I don't know when. And also at this point, like, I just couldn't picture raising daughters in that. Like, because I knew how much I hated the idea of it all. How am I going to raise my daughters and like, lie to them? I'm going to be like, this is bullshit, you know? So, at 17, so let's fast forward again to what I was telling you, like 17, my dad saying I'd rather die than leave the order. But by this point, he already knew I was running away. He already knew that I wanted to leave. And I started to get suicidal. And I was like, well, I'm either going to leave physically or I'm going to leave this earth. One or the other. And so July 25th, I was telling you when I left, July 25th of 2013. Do you want the whole story?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so July 25th of 2013, I, at this point, had been working at the order bank. So I worked at the front desk of the order bank. The order bank it's only for order members. It's a building in Salt Lake City. But there's like no words on it. You would think it's just like an office building, but it's where people go and get their money out. So I worked at the front desk, and I was given like $500 that I was allowed to give out. Only $500. If I ran out, I wasn't able to give any more. So there's more to that, but maybe in another episode we can talk about that system. But I was there, and I was slowly getting money out. And if I didn't have that position, I wouldn't have had access to my money. I figured out how to make fake authorizations to get my own money out, because they don't give access to your own money. That's another reason why you feel so trapped. So I was there. I was slowly getting my money out. Had my plans for leaving. I was trusted, at least with that job, because I had a kind of a reputation. One day my friend calls me and he says, I want to leave the order. I'm trying to leave the order, and they're not giving my money. He had like 30, 40, I can't remember if it was 30, 40 or 50,000, but it was a lot of money. When he told me, I was like, wow. And they're not giving you your money. He's like, yeah, I have no access to it. I don't know how I'm going to leave if I have $0. And so we got together and we were trying to come up with a plan of how to get his money. And he's like...
And you're 15?
I was 17 at this point. 17. Right? So 15, I figured out I wanted to leave. Yeah. 17 is like, this is the day I'm leaving. This is the day.
Still pretty young.
Right. It was a month before I turned 18. He's like, I don't know how I'm going to get my money out. So we get together. We're like around the corner from the office, from the order bank. And he's like, they trust you.
How old is he?
He was, I want to say a year or two older than me. He wasn't much older than me. So 18, maybe 19. And he's like, they trust you. And they'll let you in there. And I was like, yes, yeah, okay. What are you getting at? You can take pictures of all the underage minors that are working there, because they're always afraid of getting in trouble for child trafficking, right? Like the children are working for free, basically. So he's like, you take pictures back there. We use that as leverage to get my money. Like, we won't show anyone these pictures that you're breaking the law if you give me my money. So I was like, genius plan. I don't know how this could go wrong. I go in there and I'm like, hey, can you buzz me in the back? Because they have to like push a button for you to go to the back. And they trusted me, so I'm like, they buzzed me in the back. I started taking pictures of these minors working. I thought I was being discreet, but instantly people were like, sound the alarm. Because I was like talking to someone, I was like with my ding, 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 you know.
You needed these glasses.
I know, that would have came in so handy. I'd be like, can you say that again? Yeah. Does that record too?
Yeah,
like,
hold it and it records.
You like, say that again, you get closer. Yeah. But yeah, I was taking pictures and people started to notice. But as I was doing this, I realized, oh my God, like this might be the last time I see any of these people. If this blows up in my face, I'll never see them again. And one of my best friends was working in this room right next to us. And I was like, I'm just going to go see her for one last time. She's not going to know I'm saying goodbye. She's not going to know it's our final time, but I'm going to know. It was like special to me, I guess. I went over there. And if I would have left, I would have gone away with it. But I was being sentimental. And I went over there and I was like, hey, how are you? She was like she got into a marriage really young and she was struggling with the marriage. She had a kid, and I sat there and was talking to her. While I was standing and she was sitting, and I just remember her eyes like widened and she was looking behind me like, and I was like, huh? And one of Paul's brothers from behind me starts fucking attacking me, trying to get the phone that had the pictures on it. And I was like, what the fuck? Phone flies out of my hand. He runs and grabs it and grabs me and starts pushing me with his hip out the door in front of people. There were witnesses, okay, that saw this behavior. I even remember one of, I think it was David or Jesse's kid, stood up like, what's happening? Like he got really scared. He pushes me out, locks the door. I'm like, what the fuck?
Is it like the bank?
It was the bank, yeah. It was the bank, and all these people were like working for the bank. So he pushes me out the door with this phone that had the evidence of the kids working at this bank illegally because they're underage. I run across the street to my friend, and I'm like, as I'm getting to him, he's like, starts crying. He's like, you're bleeding. And I'm like, what? And I touch my neck, and I'm bleeding from the neck. This motherfucker clawed my neck.
Wow. And
I was bleeding but I didn't feel any pain because there's so much adrenaline. My friend was like, we have to call the police. Like, that's not okay that they did that. So, which thank God that he said that, because otherwise I wouldn't have. I was just like, what the fuck happened? Call the police. And this is such a crazy story because the cop that pulls over, the cop that happened to hear the call, was the same officer who was on another case for the Kingstons where a baby died. And the baby died, and they claimed the baby fell, but by the autopsy, the baby was beaten to death.
Wow.
And this cop was on that case and already hated the Kingstons. So he's like, let's get him. He pulls over. I tell him, and I remember like feeling anxiety, like he's not going to believe me. But he was like, say no more. I know the Kingstons are corrupt. He started trying to go in there and get the guy that attacked me, Paul's brother. His name's Jason. He has a record from this, by the way, because this guy helped me get it on his record. He goes in there trying to get him to confess or like try to get him out, but they were like, he told me that they were keeping the door closed and that like papers were flying. He could see through the windows. They were like panicking. And I'm like sitting there like trying to process what the fuck just happened. The cop comes back. He starts taking pictures of I had handprints all over me. I had the blood. So he was trying to take pictures of evidence. He was trying to help me.
Yeah.
30 minutes later, because Jason wouldn't come out till his attorney was present, which was another numbered man. 30 minutes later, another cop shows up, says, hey, can I come talk to you? Pulls me into his car, starts trying to convince me not to press charges on this man who just attacked me. He's like, you don't want to press charges on Jason because it's going to be a lot of work where you're going to have to go into court and blah, blah, blah. And the most he's going to get is a slap on the wrist and some community service. And I'm just a 17-year-old not knowing. And I'm like, oh, okay. I 100% believe the order was paying this cop.
Yeah, I do too. The cop doesn't just do that. I mean, cops are generally going to like be for you in that situation.
Well, even because you have this one cop that was on my side and the other cop that was on their side. It was such a weird interaction. And I remember seeing, because we were across the street at this point, and Jason finally comes out, and he's like using his lawyer to show the cops how he escorted me out of the building. And he's
with blood.
Yeah. Well, no, he was showing them as if he like just gently. I saw, and I was like, that's not what happened. That's not. I was so mad. But he was like with his lawyer saying this is exactly like he was demonstrating that he put his hands on the shoulder very nicely and said, hey, we, you know. But then they asked like, how did you get the phone? You have the phone, right? How'd you get it? And he's like, you got me. The shittiest part though was within literally hours, the whole order said, Amanda's lying. She clawed herself in the throat. He never touched her. We have video evidence that she's lying. And it was like, it didn't matter what I said. They were going to believe that narrative. And I remember being like, if they have and I said this on my YouTube channel, if they have video evidence, why do I have a piece of paper that says he had to go to anger management for beating up a minor? Because I was 17. It was an adult beating a minor. He had to go to anger management because of that. Because yes, it wasn't like I didn't press charges because that cop told me not to, but it was still on his record that he abused a minor. So if they had video evidence that he never touched me, that would have got him out of that. But he didn't have video evidence because he did touch me. And the part that pissed me off was there were witnesses. At least 10 people in the order saw this. So how are you guys coming up with this narrative that he never touched me and I was crazy enough to claw myself in the throat? But then it pissed me off so much, but then I realized like, you know what? It's really more about them. If they believe that Paul's brothers, the highest kingdom of God on the earth, the leaders, are beating people like that and like clawing young girls in the throat, then they have to rethink their entire belief system. And it's just easier to believe that I would claw myself in the throat.
And that's how you know you're in a cult. When you see people see something with their own eyes and then say something different to make their whole worldview make sense.
Yep. You know that Mark Twain quote? It is easier to it's easier to fool someone than to convince them that they've been fooled.
Uh-huh.
Because now your ego's involved. You don't want to believe that you're stupid.
Yeah.
And I very much had that too. It was hard. I didn't even call the order a cult till like years later. Escaping Polygamy was like, so basically you were in a cult. And I was like, whoa.
Really?
I feel like maybe you felt that way too, no?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I did not think I was in a cult.
Yeah.
When people said you were in a cult, I would laugh. And they would say, you guys are brainwashed.
You're like, ha!
Yeah.
And now you're like, oh.
Yeah, we're like, oh, you got me.
Yep, you got me. Yep, so that was the moment I left, because now my dad was telling me I had to apologize to him for calling the police on him if I wanted to like make amends. And I was like, nope.
I got to ask you about all the people in the order, just because those kind of communities are gossip communities.
Oh, yes. It's like that in FLDS too, huh?
Yeah, and so everybody's sitting there like, Amanda scratched herself and then blamed Jason. You know, yeah,
Crazy.
that I can totally see that happen. And like, that is 1,000% believable.
And people were saying, oh, they were telling the guy that I was trying to help, which was his idea, by the way. They were texting him saying, Amanda's just trying to get your money. Make sure she doesn't get any of your money. The only reason that she was even involved was because she wants your money.
Did he believe it?
He was like, I have no reason why she even did any of that. But he's still in there. He went back.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
It's crazy that because of this, I was able to solidify me leaving, but he ended up going back.
That is crazy that he's back.
Yep, he's married when he's there. But like, honestly, at the time I was kind of really mad at him for a lot of things. But when people are fresh out, there's so many toxic traits that we have. And it's so hard to like have healthy relationships with anyone because all of what we were taught was by unhealthy people. So now I'm at the point where I don't blame him for any of the shit that he did and why he went back and all of that. But at the time I was like, betrayal! You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I told you all my secrets and now you're going back to the order? Yeah.
It's crazy that he's back, but I can totally see how he went back. There is so many times I would have gone back if somebody would have just been kind enough to help me out a little bit,
Yeah.
So I can totally see how, he went back.
Because when you leave, you lose everything.
Yeah.
You have to start fresh with nothing.
Yeah. So what happened? Did you have somebody come pick you up, or?
Well, actually, I don't know why. I don't like to bring this person into it, but this person was there the whole time, but it was the guy that I ended up marrying. He was there.
Oh, wait, you ended up marrying?
It's on escape and polygamy. I ended up marrying this guy, and our wedding was on escape and polygamy. Divorced him we were married for like 7 years, and then I divorced him. Filed for divorce in 2021, but he was also from the group. And in this whole altercation, he was still in. And this also made him want to leave because he still had high faith in Paul. He was like, everybody, there's a lot of bad people in the order, but Paul never did anything to me. And I would be like, Paul's fucking his sisters, you dumbass. I was so mad. But this moment, when I got attacked by Paul's brother, he was like, I cannot believe. He starts trying to call Paul and be like, I'm going to tell Paul. I'm going to tell on him to his brother. I'm like, you're wasting your time. He's going to, I knew. But he was like, no. He still was a believer. Then he realized that Paul instantly took his brother's side, like I said. And then he was like, oh my gosh. He didn't say you're right. He's like, did you know Paul's bad? I'm like, as I was saying. So he leaves too with me, and I was kind of like staying with him for a little bit. And then I was so lucky actually for this. When I went to public school, when I was telling you that I met that girl who was so nice, and she was a black girl, first black friend I ever had, first outside friend really. I also met this other girl who was LDS, and they found out I was from a polygamous cult. And they were just waiting for the moment that they could take care of. It was so sweet. They became my adopted family. I'm actually going to go to their house today. When they found out that I was out and like needing help, instantly like took me on as their own kids. So I was with him for a little bit till I turned 18 because they didn't want to be harboring a minor because the order would sue the hell out of them. So as soon as I was 18, I started living with them for a while. And they helped me so much to heal a lot of like my wounds. And I didn't even realize they were there. Like when the dad would be like, come sit down, tell me about your day. I'd be like, what did I do wrong? Because that's what my dad, anytime he talked to me, I was like, fuck! Because he has 32 kids. Why is he going to sit down and talk to me unless I'm in trouble? Mm-hmm. So there was things that got brought up. It was actually kind of traumatic living with them because it made me realize like, oh, that's how that was really fucked up. What I came from was so fucked up that I would see his relationship with his daughter and be like, you guys are weirdos, because he loved her. And I didn't know what that looked like. And so a lot of my nights there were spent crying myself to sleep, realizing that what I thought was normal was actually fucked up.
Yeah.
So I was there for a while until I married my husband on escape and polygamy. I was 18. I was so young. I was like, I'm an old maid. Because in the order, 18 was old.
Yeah.
But yeah. So to answer your question, I stayed with my adopted family until I married him. And then divorced him 2021. And then moved to Vegas, Sin City.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And you don't like Utah because of it?
I don't. This trip has not been as bad as it used to be. It used to be that every time the plane would land in Utah, I would feel this heaviness. And this, every time I see a plig rig, do you guys call them plig rigs? The big polygamous fans, plig rig?
Mm-mm.
That's what we call them. Every time I see a plig rig, I'd be like, who's driving it? It's probably my cousins, probably my aunt, So it's like I'm on high alert.
Yeah.
But lately, and maybe it means that I've healed, I'm not as, my face used to get super puffy and
Really?
It was you could see the stress.
Wow.
Because it was maybe my mind is healing, but my body remembers what happened in these areas,
Wow.
So, do you feel that way about Colorado City?
No.
Texas.
No, I don't really feel that way.
When's the last time you went there?
I snuck on the land after, I have some pictures. We ran across the neighbor because they won't let you in. It's a military training place. Military contractor training place.
Where the temple is?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, a military contractor bought it. And so they won't even think about letting you on. So we decided to just sneak on. And yeah, we spent about 4 hours there, and it was crazy because when I was little, we were hiding from planes and everything, and a plane came flying right over us when I was there, and we were like ducking under the trees, and I was like, oh man, we're back to when I was a kid. But
yep. So in a
Anyway.
way, you did go back to like, because my anxiety, I think when I came here was like my body remembering what I went through. So kind of technically, you were like, oh, back in the cult.
Yeah.
What's it like?
Yeah.
What made you want to
But-
go on the property?
Actually, I hadn't really totally left.
Oh,
either.
at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So,
That makes sense.
but yeah. Wow, I forgot what I was going to say.
No, I keep having moments like that. I'm like, I swear to God, I had a good thought, but right now I'm sounding like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But do you think we should start mine?
Yes.
It's almost 9 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah, everybody. Yeah, let's
Unless you have one more question or anything else you wanted to add.
well, I honestly, I could ask you another solid 2 hours of questions. I really could.
So if you guys like this, let us know, and maybe we'll do it like second time.
Yeah.
Like a follow-up.
Yeah, so we got to get doing the episode that's going to be on her channel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe link it down below, and then you guys can
Yeah.
click it after this. Because I don't know if this one will be released before mine, or mine will be released before yours. But
So this will be released in 2 weeks.
okay, then mine's gonna come out before yours because I actually want to. I'm being really quick at editing, and I want this one to come out this week.
Okay.
So mine, I guess I'll link this one.
Okay, and
Once it's released.
Yeah, I'll link yours
Once yours is okay.
when I release this one.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Hope you guys enjoyed.
Yeah.
Bye.
So go over to her channel to check out. She's gonna do one for her podcast right
Yes.
now. Thanks, guys. See you later. Peace out.
Bye.